Jonathan Kim's in the house, so who wouldn't be excited? Okay. Now, we're going to review a movie called Exit Through the Gift Shop. It's about these graffiti folks. And Grandpa Jenk does not approve. Little skepticism. Okay, so we're going to have an interesting conversation after the review. But you know, John, I was skeptical about dirt a little bit. You remember the last time we did a review? Lo and behold, I read an article in Mother Jones about peak soil that you mentioned. You know what? It turns out it's a really important issue. Why didn't you tell me that?
I didn't tell you that. That didn't come across.
All right. Well, and that is interesting. I mean, that's. I'm still optimistic in the long run, but that peak soil is, and how we're losing the dirt, etc. It turns out that's a real cause of concern.
Yeah, Alternet actually has a good series, like the 7 Myths of Modern Agriculture, that people should read. That's very good.
That's good. And you know what? I'm going to be on the weekends. I tweet out articles a lot more when I have time. So I'll tweet out the Mother Jones article to everybody. You can check it out there. Obviously, twitter.com/TheYoungTurks. All right? Keep it real. All right, now, let's look at Exit Through the Gift Shop and come back and talk about that.
On a family holiday to France, a chance discovery sent Terry's life in a dramatic new direction.
My cousin, at that time, he was artistic. You know, he was putting mosaic together and trying to do the game of Space Invaders, recreating the character kind of way. So I filmed him.
Terry's cousin was Space Invader, a major player in an explosive new movement that would become known as street art. This hybrid form of graffiti was driven by a new generation using stickers, stencils, posters and sculptures to make their mark by any means necessary. Street art was poised to become the biggest countercultural movement since punk. And Terry had landed right in the middle of it.
In the 1990s, an offshoot of graffiti known as street art began appearing in cities around the world. It distinguished itself from conventional graffiti by going beyond tagging and bragging by using social commentary, humor, and politically charged messages, often employing newer, faster techniques like stencils, stickers, and large posters. In many ways, street art was to the art world what punk rock was to the music world, breaking the rules to show that something didn't have to be in a gallery or a museum to be art, that any surface you could hit without being arrested could be your canvas. By accident, a camera-obsessed French shopkeeper named Terry Guetta became the sole videographer to document this notoriously secretive world, landing unprecedented access to some of the biggest figures in street art, and eventually earning the trust of the king of street art and, in my opinion, the world's greatest living artist, the man known only as Banksy. But when Guetta handed over his tapes to Banksy after failing to make the definitive street art documentary, Banksy turned the tables and made a documentary about Guetta himself and the mainstreaming of the street art movement. But in the end, it may have been Guetta who got the last laugh, a story told in the excellent, must-see documentary Exit Through the Gift Shop. Guetta, who owned a clothes shop in Los Angeles, never went anywhere without a camera and compulsively recorded everything around him. During a visit to France, he learned that his cousin was a highly regarded street artist named Space Invader. Following Space Invader and his friends with camera in hand, Guetta became intoxicated by the danger and excitement of these outlaw artists as they broke the law to make their statements. So he dedicated himself to finding and following the world's best street artists, using his cred as Space Invader's cousin to gain access. One of Guetta's big scores was meeting Shepard Fairey, one of street art's biggest stars who was infamous for his Obey pieces featuring images of Andre the Giant and, later, his iconic Hope image of Barack Obama. Guetta followed Fairey around the world, where Guetta became as much an accomplice as a videographer, often acting as an assistant and lookout. But the street artist Guetta most wanted to meet was Banksy, who keeps his identity a closely guarded secret and was known around the world for his insanely clever and political pieces, as well as high-profile stunts like secretly hanging his own artwork in museums and hitting the separation wall between Israel and Palestine. By sheer luck, Guetta was introduced to the notoriously secretive Banksy, who amazingly let Guetta film him working and eventually made him one of his most trusted confidants. With the popularity of street art growing and Banksy's pieces selling for hundreds of thousands of dollars, Banksy encouraged Guetta to finish his street art documentary. Little did he know that Guetta, who had no filmmaking experience, had never intended to make a documentary and had never even watched or organized the thousands of tapes he'd shot. So when Guetta eventually finished an unwatchable cut of his documentary, Banksy took possession of the tapes and told Guetta to continue with his art while Banksy worked on the film. Guetta would take this as a direct order from his king, remortgaging his house and business to start a large-scale art studio, where he began pumping out pieces under the name Mr. Brainwash that were shameless rip-offs of the work made by the artists he admired. Eventually, Goethe staged a huge art show of his work, a near disaster that earned Goethe nearly $1 million and catapulted him into the ranks of street art's elite. However, this drew the scorn of established street artists, including Banksy and Ferry, who criticized the unoriginality of his work and the fact that Goethe had never paid his dues or developed his voice as an artist. By the end of Exit Through the Gift Shop, you're left wondering who the sucker is. Is it Goethe, who wanted to make a documentary about Banksy, only to have Banksy take his footage and make a documentary about Goethe? Is it the film's audience, who expected to see a doc about Banksy only to find a movie about some weirdo Frenchman? Is it Banksy, Ferry, and the street art community, who let Goethe into their world only to have him rip off their styles and make a fortune from it? Or is it the art world, who considered Goethe's shamelessly derivative pieces to be the work of a fresh and original genius and shelled out top dollar for it? Exit Through the Gift Shop doesn't provide any easy answers to these questions. However, one of Banksy's main street art philosophies is that the mainstream art world is dumb, and that there should be no rules deciding who is or isn't an artist and what is or isn't art. Depending on how you look at Exit Through the Gift Shop, you could say that Banksy was bitten in the ass by a monster he helped create, or that he proved his thesis beyond a reasonable doubt. I'm Jonathan Kim, and this is a Rethink Review.
God, I'm so conflicted on this, John. Okay, first of all, you know, street art, it's great. Don't get me wrong, okay? And, you know, I'm an artist at heart, okay? And I'm down, I'm jiggy. Except they didn't ask us, right? And maybe they're not supposed to ask us, and maybe that's part of the art, right? But I feel like if I went into somebody's living room and started doing the Young Turks there, they'd be like, wait a minute, it's cool when you're online, but why are you in my living room?
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I can understand. I mean, you wouldn't want it necessarily like on your house by your front door, but if it's kind of like industrial spaces or like in some alley or just some, would you rather see like some really cool mural or just some big flat wall? You know, and part of the idea of street art is that when you put it out on the street, more people see it, and you don't get stuck with the gatekeepers of the museums and the gallery owners, and also that people won't even come and see it. How often do you walk into a gallery, or if you have to spend $5 to go into a museum, you may not do it. But if you put it on the street, more people will see it.
I know, but there's something intrusive about it. Like if you say, hey, you know, I can't make it into a big gallery, boo-hoo. All right, start a small gallery. Don't charge anybody anything for it. Now, I know you got to rent, right? Do it in somebody's house. I mean, you want to, you know what I'm saying? You want to do a ground level grassroots. You know, open up somebody's house and be like, here's my art. It seems like they're forcing the art on some people. And, you know, I find it interesting, but I can see how a lot of people might not.
Right.
So I guess that's why I'm concerned about it. But it's ironic, too, because Banksy talks about that in terms of billboards and advertising.
Yeah. He said, like, in this book, which is called Wall and Peace, which everyone should get, it's really, really great. It's really funny. He says, the people who truly deface our neighborhoods are the companies that scrawl their giant slogans across buildings and buses, trying to make us feel inadequate unless we buy their stuff. They expect to be able to shout their message in your face from every available surface, but you're never allowed to answer back. Well, they started this fight, and the wall is the weapon of choice to hit them back.
I hear you, and that's why you should get Exit Through the Gift Shop at netflix.com/TYT. All right. No, seriously though, look, somebody owns the billboard and they're selling it. Now, you know, maybe I need to have that conventional wisdom shaken out of me. Maybe the right way to do ads is on videos that you volunteer to watch, for example, or on TV shows you volunteer to watch. And maybe we shouldn't have billboards. But I understand the logic of it. It seems like he's arguing against the whole system, in which case you could say, hey, that's a fair argument, right? But I'm a little thrown off by the involuntary nature of it, but otherwise, I enjoy his message. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, and I think that it speaks to if you make art that is good quality, that is nice to look at, and you know, basically he says the way he started doing he does a lot of stencils, and it was because it took too much time to do a nice big mural, and you would get caught. He realized he could cut his time down vastly by just making a stencil, putting it up, spraying it, and going. And actually, Esquire voted him like one of their People of the Year a few years ago. And they went to Bristol, England, where supposedly he lives. And they said that everyone there just loves him. And he said, the reporter said, whenever I mentioned Banksy to everyone, the first thing people did was smile. Because his stuff is so clever and it's so funny, and it also has a lot of political meaning as well, and people just love it.
And let me tell you the part I enjoy about Banksy, how he makes fun of the art community. Okay, and because look, it's not that art is wrong. Obviously he's an artist, right? And a lot of people would say he's a true artist. It's just that any establishment gets ossified, and then they have their own little rules on what you can and can't do, et cetera, et cetera. And that establishment, in a lot of ways, becomes absurd. Now, on the Young Turks, we often talk about it in terms of politics and the media. He's talking about it in terms of the art world. And yeah, of course, I don't think the art world has any idea what anything is quote-unquote worth, except what they get in their crazy rich minds and inflated sense of what the art should be, etc. So that's why I think the Guetta Banksy thing is fascinating too. Like, I don't blame Guetta. I mean, he ripping people's style off a little bit. Yeah, of course, that's a problem, right? But he figured out the system and he made $1 million off of it. I mean, don't hate the player, hate the game, right? And then, but what's ironic is then Banksy turns around, and how much money has he made?
He makes plenty. I mean, his LA show that was in 2006. It sold $5.85 million of art in 2 hours, and Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie own over $2 million worth of his art. Christina Aguilera has bought some. It sells really well at Sotheby's auctions.
So, but then there's so many. I'm so conflicted about this, and there's so many different ironies here because then he's making fun of the art world, and the art world winds up giving him $5.85 million. But that almost vitiates his argument because if he's right, then he's wrong. Because if it turns out his stuff is really great and he is a real artist and it is worth $6 million, well, then maybe the art world does have it figured out. They found the right guy and they reward him for it.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, it's also, yeah, I mean, the art world came to him, you know, right. I don't think he was pitching them. But also, I think it speaks to a newer generation of people that at one point in one of his auctions, someone was saying that, well, you know, this is for younger people. You know, like a Picasso sure is great because it's Picasso. But if you're a younger person, you like graffiti, it means more to you. Banksy's stuff is political. It's about our modern culture now. Wouldn't you rather have one of those? And as much as his stuff is going for, it's probably a good investment because he keeps on breaking his own records and outdoing his estimates of how much things are worth. He did a cover for a Blur album, and it went for 10 times its estimated value at a Sotheby's auction.
You see, now I'm back to the original Banksy, which is the art world is insane. I mean, it's almost like Goldman Sachs. It's speculative, right? I mean, they're betting on Banksy's art to gain in value. It's not that somebody thinks, oh my God, this is worth, like, I need to have this in my living room as opposed to Bob's living room so much that I'm going to pay 10 times more. No, he thinks this value is going to go up, etc. Now, I'm being too general, okay? But I get so skeptical about this stuff.
Yeah, it's all speculation. I mean, actually, when I reviewed Wall Street, there's a clip where he's like, look at this, like, where Michael does, like, look at this painting, like, I bought it for this much, it's going to be worth this much. The painting is still the same, but it's just it's the perception that means it. But what he says about art is, I mean, art in museums is, the art we look at is made by only a select few. A small group create, promote, purchase, exhibit, and decide the success of art. Only a few hundred people in the world have any real say. When you go to an art gallery, you're simply a tourist looking at the trophy cabinet of a few millionaires.
Right, and now the funny thing is, his art is among the trophies.
Yeah, he actually, I mean, he illegally hangs his own paintings in museums sometimes, and he hung one in the Tate Modern Gallery in England, and they've now made it part of the permanent collection.
Wow, I like that attitude. He's like, look, I'm coming to your house, okay? Whether you like it or not, I'm going to hang it there and it's going to stay there. So, look, there's a lot I enjoyed about that. But then, look, to come back to the original point real quick. So what then, according to this, why can't I do TYT logo everywhere, okay? On the side of huge buildings, TYT. Street art. How you like me now?
Well, that's why the street art community were, for the most part, they're anonymous. They don't want to broadcast exactly who they are. If they put TYT around, then people would look it up. But if it was other people doing it for you who just were fans of it and put it up there.
I haven't said a word. Not a word. I didn't say anything. I'm just saying. All right. I don't condone anything. Okay.
I do actually deface, especially advertisements. Deface any advertisement you can get your hands on.
Well, no, I definitely don't agree with that either. Okay. Anyway, so Guetta, he's not related to the DJ, is he? Do you know the Guetta?
No.
Okay. All right. And then finally, what happened? So it was big in the late 1990s, I think you said. So what's going on with street art now?
I mean, I think it's becoming bigger. I mean, Shepard Fairey for his Obama, who did the Obama Hope thing. I mean, he's having a big show. I think somewhere in New York. The original of that went for, I think, one of the originals of the Hope painting went for $108,000. I think now basically all major art auctions carry street art. I think it's keeping on going. The interesting thing is how to stop it from being derivative, because I think some of the styles are so iconic, like Banksy's work, and that's what Mr. Brainwash copied. And actually, they say in the movie, Brainwash doesn't even make his own stuff. He's like Andy Warhol. He just hires people to do it. He has like a factory where they kind of pump out stuff, and it really doesn't have that much meaning. But at the same time, you can't say that it's wrong that he's doing it.
Well, look, there's two ways to look at that. Then you can call him the Thomas Edison of street art. You know, Edison didn't make his own stuff either. He just hired a whole bunch of people and said, "Have at it, Hoss," and then took the profits and the glory. But that was smart, and we needed somebody like Edison, and maybe we needed somebody like Guetta so that Banksy could break out.
It could. I mean, it's probably enhancing the the cost of Banksy's stuff in terms of what it's worth.
Oh, no question. Banksy's got to be thrilled that Guetta came around.
Yeah, it's tough at this. I mean, like I said in the review, that there's guys who've really been living this life for a long time and really put a lot of meaning into their stuff, and then Guetta comes along and becomes kind of an instant millionaire when he doesn't even make it and hasn't even really done that much stuff.
Well, welcome to capitalism, baby. Okay, and finally, I've always loved the Obey stuff, and I was always envious of how he spread that stuff around. And I kind of looked it up, but I never knew why Andre the Giant was the the guy who was part of Obey. Do you know or no?
Yeah, actually, I went to Shepard Fairey's website, and he's talking about the Obey sticker. The Obey sticker attempts to stimulate curiosity and bring people to question both the sticker and their relationship with their surroundings. Because people are not used to seeing advertisements or propaganda for which the product or motive is not obvious, frequent and novel encounters with the sticker provoke thought and possible frustration, nevertheless revitalizing the viewer's perception and attention to detail. The sticker has no meaning but exists only to cause people to react, to contemplate and search for meaning in the sticker. Because Obey has no actual meaning, the various reactions and interpretations of those who view it reflect their personality and the nature of their sensibilities.
Look, there's a lot I enjoy about that, but part of my problem with art is that I want stuff to have meaning. And so I get a little frustrated. Like, I feel it would be better, and I know that's so subjective and ridiculous, but I feel it would be better for me if it had some meaning, and then he tells you, and you go, oh, that's cool. That's still pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of putting up like a Big Brother like kind of image all over the place, but no one knows who it is or what it's for, or what it's supposed to mean, and what it's supposed to do about it. And he talks about how some people just kind of latch onto it as sort of a symbol of subversion, even though they don't know what it is necessarily. It's kind of like what's happened with punk. Like, punk used to mean something, and now it's basically just a style of clothing. Right.
And you know what? I figured it out. The TYT logo should stand for Don't Obey. Think about it. All right. Now, while you're thinking about it, go to rethinkreviews.net, Rethink Reviews on YouTube, and on Huffington Post. Thank you, as always, John.
Thank you.
All right. We'll be back.